Hello, we're going to start today's class. Um, and let's start by sharing sound. All right. Okay. Okay. To be a Jew in the free world, Jewish identity through the lens of modern history, class number 4. We skipped one, and the course has, the whole course has a couple more classes. For our summer, giving ourselves a round of applause, we're doing a slightly abbreviated version. So, class number 4, which is lesson 5 in the textbook, is which is on page 167, first page up, is called A Welcoming Society: Finding Motivation to Live as a Jew. And it also, that's the title, but also it's going to talk a lot about, is anti-Semitism a motivation, a successful motivating factor to make the Jewish people flourish and continue. So we're going to go to page 1. Actually, before we do that, a big buzzword in Jewish, discussions, in Jewish professional organizations, synagogues, temples, is about Jewish continuity. It's a buzzword, Jewish continuity, for a bunch of years already. And the question about, this is very important, Jewish continuity. We have to continue. We have to continue, and we have to figure how do we create a atmosphere for continuity. Or another way of saying it is, like, how do we, help the young people discover Jewish identity? But we have to really dig into what Jewish identity is and why it's so important to have continuity. I mean, you can't just take for granted, oh, Jewish continuity. Well, what does Jewish identity mean in a very serious, pointed way to ourselves? And once we can, explain it to ourselves and others, then we can, really work hard for continuity. If we're just going to say it as a buzzword, as many people, sometimes do, because it's a true thing. But if you don't dig into what the Jewish part of that equation is, the Jewish identity part that you're trying to continue, then it's hard. It's very hard to really do it in an effective way. You give it all you got. So we're going to talk about today Jewish identity. And
let's just say medically that you understand something about the Torah.
yeah,
So you've been through a few cycles of the Torah. How how can you not understand the distinction between, like, us and them? It sounds like a funny way to put it.
so answer your own question. Not everybody that talks about Jewish continuity studies the Torah for a cycle or two. But even if you do study, to be fair, even if you do study the Torah, even if you do have an education, right? Even if you went to Chabad Marine School, where they taught you how to do Jewish, stuff. Um, the reality is that sometimes the truth hidden in plain sight, meaning just because you might have learned the Torah or, had education, doesn't mean you might. For example, we all say America, incredible place, right? Does everybody think about what it actually means to be an American, what these truths that people give their lives are for, like what they are? Man, most people don't, don't have, you don't have to. There's a good chance you won't, right? And the challenge of not, answering these questions, of defining identities to ourselves, is that you take them for granted and they slowly erode.
Well, it's not even just the Torah. I mean, we can pick a number of situations, like whether it's Purim or Hanukkah. If you understand these stories at all, you see that
That what? That they tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, but that so you know what? We'll get to that. That's actually great. So if you so actually I'm happy you brought it up because that's a this was unscripted. Just we don't have a teleprompter here. This is very real. That many people think you say had a cursory understanding of Jewish history and destiny. It's inspiring to want it to continue. Look, so many times they tried to kill us and we won. And now they're trying to kill us again. And we're gonna win. So in other words, you're saying, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm trying to prove my point, is that the mere fact that there's so much Jew hatred should make us realize we have to keep this thing going. In other words, anti-Semitism is a very strong historic anti-Semitism throughout all the stories, all the holidays, the modern, situations that we deal with today is anti-Semitic attitudes towards the Jewish existence. And that you're saying should be a good reason to have the continuation of Jewish identity.
Like same token, lines what you were saying a few minutes ago. There are a lot of people who just don't understand. They think that Hitler was maybe some kind of anomaly, and they don't understand that Europe in general was some Jews.
Let's talk about ourselves, Jewish people ourselves. Like I'm not talking others think or don't know. Like we know there's been a lot of anti-Semitism. We
I'm
know.
saying there are a lot of, I'll bet there are a lot of Jews who
Oh,
don't really understand. They think that, well, there was Hitler and there was this
right,
Romans and
right.
as opposed to saying, the French, the Eastern Europeans, the Italians, they all wanted to kill Jews.
Right. We'll get to that. So I'm happy you're saying, well, keep that.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, Ravi, when I say like I'm escaping Cuba and everybody was noticing, oh, the dictator. It's not a dictator, it's an ideology. I escaped communists. But to be Jewish, it defined me to be like, okay, I recognize that I don't escape a dictator, I escape an ideology, a communist that is the worst of everything. But to be Jewish in this country, it made me realize that I was coming through in Cuba. It's not only a dictator, it's an ideology. It's worse than that. Communist is like the worst of
Right.
everything.
No, you're right. That's sort of what Gary's saying. And basically, all these evil haters remind us how important we have to fight for our continuation. We'll get to there, but I'm just keep that. Okay, let's do a learning exercise. So before the question was, what are the primary forces that helped us choose to lead a Jewish life? That's question one, big question. Number two, what can be done to help the next generation choose to lead a Jewish life? Okay, so you have this little learning exercise one. We're going to take 90 seconds, and I'd like you to fill them out with your pencil. There are pencils there if you need, and then we can maybe share our results. And while you're filling it out, just reading the board, to what degree have the following impacted your commitment to leading a Jewish life? If you're listening to this later on YouTube, has the experience of anti-Semitism impacted your commitment to Judaism? Has the Holocaust and consciousness, has that impacted your commitment to leading a Jewish life? And Israel, the state of affairs, the founding, the fighting, the survival of Israel, has that impact your commitment to leading a Jewish life? Okay. What were the numbers for on a scale of 1 to 10? Anti-Semitism. How much impact has it had on your leading a Jewish life? Share a number. Avi? One, very little impact. Okay,
Rare.
very little, very little. Pam, very little, okay. The Holocaust, how much has that impacted your, your leading a Jewish life, to whatever degree that is?
Yeah.
10. Wow, it's big. It's a big factor for
I know
you.
a lot of people who were at it by the Holocaust.
Right. Wow. Pam, any?
About 8.
8?
I could have gone to
Eight.
eight though.
Okay. You're an overachiever. Lisa,
See a low numbers, I mean, you're looking at any of these,
so you think Holocaust did not have a huge, I mean, we're among friends. Secrets, the Holocaust didn't.
reading it, like, I feel like I haven't contributed to Jewish life and these things don't.
They're not the catalyst. They're right. Right. Yeah. So slow. Okay. Israel. What about Israel? Whatever, any part of Israel's existence.
Yeah,
10? Wow, big.
Did 8 again.
8.
I could go with eight though.
Okay.
Something.
Anybody else want to share?
It's just high number. I mean, I just pick
Yeah, I get a lot, very much. What about you, Avi?
a little.
A little, Israel, and yours really. Okay. So that's overall, if you can trace back the impact, besides childhood trauma, whatever.
It's in Israel because all of a sudden we did see the kind of thing in the United States that happened in Europe. Israel is our
No, but that's not about that's not about the important. The question is about the importance. We're talking about the existence of these entities, Holocaust, Israel. How much have their existence and everything surrounding them?
Israel's a safety net. I'm saying
So that's because you have a safety net. Therefore, you choose to come to shul. I'm asking like that's. I mean, your Jewish life isn't. It's about now, like how you've developed. In a sense, a little bit of difference. The question. It's not like how important is Israel. That's not the question. The question is,
it's playing very critical.
okay,
Because
in your development.
I've known it. Yeah, I was born in '54, so Israel was there as a '48.
So it gave a certain strength, pride to bolster Judaism. Okay, that's good. Currently, how effective are anti-Semitism, the Holocaust in Israel, or any of these things, in creating a desire to lead a Jewish life as compared to when you were young? So, meaning, were these things were they? I mean, I guess we're assuming when you're young they had. Well, I guess it's not saying. Is it more effective, less effective, about the same? Are these bigger factors in your Jewish life than when you were young, or lesser factors? Bigger for you because now you're more mature, I guess, right? You're mature and appreciate them. Avi, Lisa,
Or where.
more aware. They're still not necessarily the main starting catalyst for you, if I'm understanding correctly, but they're important issues that probably help somewhat.
Maybe not necessarily catalyst, but more like you might be more inspired to pursue the Jewish life in honor of what you can, especially like
That's a catalyst. That's a catalyst.
all the issues. Like,
That's a catalyst. I mean, it's not it doesn't have to be the exclusive, cause, but you're saying it's a very important cause. Like people can't be Jews because they were killed in the Holocaust. I'm going to be Jewish. That is a very real argument that people have put forward. Okay.
But for like my parents, anti-Semitism was
Oh,
really important.
so we're going to get this. So it's interesting. We're acknowledging from Gary, we're going to accept Gary as a spokesman, is that anti-Semitism was a lot worse in the 20s and 30s than it was in your growing up, or even with now. We're going to see a video now that it was really something in the 20s and 30s. It was acceptable. It was a part of life. So let's see. The 40s.
I remember my dad not being able to belong to certain places.
Right.
Where I grew up and not realizing until I was a little older that it's because he was Jewish.
Right. So 50s. It became illegal in the 60s. So I think that
The 1920s in America were a time of widespread prosperity. Everything seemed possible with the proliferation of new technologies such as the telephone, the automobile, moving pictures, and radio. The decade was aptly named the Roaring Twenties. But there was a darker side to the decade, and one of its primary perpetrators was Henry Ford, the inventor of the Model T, which was the first automobile that middle-class Americans could afford. At the height of his success, Henry Ford purchased a weekly newspaper, the Dearborn Independent, and used it to publish anti-Semitic diatribes in which he blamed the Jews for all the problems of the world. At the time, discrimination against Jews in America was widely practiced.
There was a fear that Jews were promoting communism and revolutionary ideologies, but most of all, I think there was a sense that America as a whole was changing because of the many immigrants who had come in the preceding 50 years, and there was great fear of these changes.
Anti-Semitism reached its peak in the 1920s and 30s, and it was not uncommon for hotels, clubs, and beaches to display signs that read, "No Jews or dogs admitted." There were quotas to keep Jews out of schools. Jews were restricted in terms of where they could live, and they were excluded from certain professions.
Young Jews knew that they couldn't be bankers, or they couldn't work for certain kinds of companies because those companies would not hire a Jew, or as they said it, a Jew would not be comfortable here. And in many cases, Jews had to create a kind of parallel universe. Jewish law firms, Jewish country clubs, Jewish vacation hotels, simply because they were not admitted to the general country clubs and hotels, and certainly were not admitted into the white gumshoe law firms in that period.
For Jews living in America from the 1920s until after World War II, this kind of discrimination served as a constant reminder of their Jewish origins. No matter their qualifications, certain doors were closed to them, and it was clear that the surrounding culture would not allow them to assimilate. Although Jews had believed that America would be different, during the period between the World Wars, this would largely not be the case.
Okay. So I go back. Okay. So next, number one. So in this that backdrop brings Hank Greenberg. On Sunday, September 29, 1935, was also Rosh Hashanah. With a pennant secured, Detroit Tigers first baseman Hank Greenberg could have sat without hurting his team. With the home run title on the line, he had 36 homers. To the Philadelphia Athletics first baseman Jimmy Fox's 34, Hank played. Hank swung hard without result. He struck out 3 times, went 0 for 7 on that day. Meanwhile, in a game against the Washington Senators, Jimmy Fox hit 2 home runs in Sheeb Park to tie Hank with 36 on the season. The Senator catcher hadn't wanted a Jew to win the batting title, so he let Fox know what pitches were coming. Afterwards, the catcher bragged he had kept Greenberg from winning the home run title. When Henry Coppola, the Senators' pitcher, took the loss, found that his catcher had betrayed him, he punched him in the nose. The damage had already been done. Greenberg had to share the home run title. So the Cubbies, I remember that story to read the course. Why? What would make this catcher betray his team? Like, that's a pretty it's pretty low. Just going against, that team bond, wanting to win, the betrayal, losing the game, all these things, and only to keep a Jew from winning the title. So, I'm going to give an idea why, like why, just like why would he? Why? I don't know if you would see that today.
Anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism. I'm saying, but like,
But happened
where does that come from?
with that as well.
Oh, we'll get to that. Yep. Okay. So first of all, the reality is anti-Semitism. We don't. This is from the Haggadah, text 2. Someone want to read text number 2?
Not only one individual, Pharaoh, that had risen against us to destroy us, rather in every generation we rise against us to annihilate us. But the Holy One, blessed be he, saved us from their hand.
So this that catcher wasn't alone. Unfortunately, every generation has been catchers and other bad people who want to, destroy us. So can everybody tell me what they think some ways anti-Semitism differs from other bigotry? Like what's unique about anti-Semitism?
Well, one thing is takes what would normally be viewed as a good trait and uses it against the Jews. And so it's like, well,
Which good trait?
I was gonna say hardworking, trying to get as much knowledge, let's say book knowledge.
Industriousness.
Yeah, saying that,
That's just okay. So it's just like it's so deep that the good traits are even viewed as bad.
Yeah.
It's like so.
It's happened since our patriarch Abraham Avinu, so it's forever.
So that's right. The longevity. It's the world's oldest hatred. Right. It's like I don't know if there's any Babylonians. Maybe there was anti-Babylonian, prejudice, but they're not around anymore. Whatever. I mean, this has been going on for so long.
Maybe what would be used by some strange religious practices.
So another thing that's unique about, but there's people who hate other religions. There are, religious haters of other religions. What's unique here is also that even academics don't even agree what the reason. It's not like, there's a common academic understanding of why there's anti-Semitism.
It's supposed to be irrational.
So that's unique quality. Meaning, when there's a fighting over a country, okay, it's horrible and it's wrong and there's innocent people killed, but there's a reason. When there's when the Irish hated the British and in Kosovo there's something to pin it on. Okay, it gets out of hand, but here there's no rhyme or reason. The Jews are hated not only because of their religion, they're hated because they're godless. When they were the cosmopolitan Jew, they're hated for their religion. They're hated because they're godless. They're hated because they're capitalist. There's not like one reason. There's no reason that you can pin it on. It's just this irrational hatred. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that when we spoke about the Enlightenment came around, many Jews were attracted to the Enlightenment because one of the reasons was they're going to now be in a universal world that does not have anti-Semitism, right? The Jews hate it because the Jews other. The Jews other religion, it looks different and ghetto. But now the doors are open. We can assimilate. We can become, we can go to the same universities in Germany, wherever, in France. And now seemingly that will take away, if the reason is the otherness, that will take it away. Now there will be less anti-Semitism. So we read text number 3. It's only like text number 3. This is from Bernard Lewis, a professor from British American historian.
There's a common view among the Enlightenment European philo-Semites that Jewish separateness was an anomaly, to cause all Jewish defects, the existence of which they readily admitted. Solution was to end that anomaly for the Jews to emerge from their ghettos, become a part of the general population in every way. In other words, to cease to be Jews in any meaningful sense. While those Jews who insisted on remaining in the ghetto aroused one kind of indignation, their brothers who accepted the invitation to come out soon found themselves confronted by another far more serious and dangerous kind of resentment. By the mid-19th century, anti-Semitism was undermined by a new theoretical polemical literature portraying the Jew as an evil and dangerous intruder in European society, whose penetration and depredation had to be stopped that society worked to survive. By now, the difference and the danger are defined, usually not exclusively in racial rather than religious.
So surprise, the Enlightenment didn't help. The Jews are now, they did their best to assimilate and become more likable and similar to their host countries. And now they're hated for a brand new reason. Now the pseudoscience of the Jewish race and the Jewish mindset is embedded, and it's just this devious outsider that's undermining and trying to take over the country or the financial whatever. So they thought the Enlightenment, they thought they had it right, and they were wrong. It didn't work. So that wasn't the reason we were hated. It was because of being other. It wasn't because of otherness. Because when we became working super hard to become the same, it was the same, if not worse, the reaction. Okay. Incidentally,
like one in the United States, as early as the 18th century, and they had better luck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think every Enlightenment figure was an anti-Semite. I'm saying as overall in Europe. So it's interesting. The United States.
That's my point.
Europe was right.
More extreme.
Right.
The United States, until the 20s and 30s.
Right. Interesting. You wonder why. Maybe maybe I don't know. I didn't think of this before, but maybe it's because the Enlightenment didn't hit America the same way it hit in Europe. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Washington was different than the typical.
Right. There was a certain more of a reverence for deism, God. Like it wasn't Enlightenment. Like throw everything away from the past. It was rooted in a more God ethos, Puritan ethos. I don't know. I'm just assuming, but it's interesting you note that. Okay. Let's talk about from the Torah the most famous case of anti-Semitism probably in the Torah, although we just had Bilam and Balak. That's pretty famous, but it's not as famous as the Purim story. So you have text 4 is Haman said to King Achashverosh, there's a certain people scattered and separate among the peoples throughout all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws differ from those very people, and they do not keep the king's laws. It is therefore of no use for the king to let them be. If it pleases the king, let a decree be written ordering their destruction, and I will have my workers weigh out 10,000 silver cubits to bring to the king's treasuries. The king said to Haman, the silver you can keep, and the people do with them as you please. Okay, here's a question. Famous, right? Haman said, give me the Jews, here's the money. King said, keep the money. I'm happy. Who's the villain? Who's the main villain of the Purim story? Haman. According to this, Achashverosh is probably the same, if not worse. Right? He was willing to kill him without the money, even. Like,
yeah, but he kind of
he was
somewhat reformed.
But at the end, but like you're right. Okay, good point. That is a good point. Somewhat reformed, but like the starting point is it's funny. The kids' stories, Achashverosh never looked at. He's very open, he's very fat, and he's like eating all the time. He's just like this foolish king. That's the way he's depicted as. In truth, and the reality is, this is from right in the Megillah, and how much more so with the commentaries, he was a rabid anti-Semite. So how come he gets kind of reformed or whitewashed? He's not given as much of a bad rap as Haman. What? What?
Esther.
Because Esther convinced them otherwise.
Love changes.
Love changes. Love, yeah. All you need is love, right? So before we get to Esther and all that, because the answer is he did do better. He became a better towards the end. But I want to share text 5a. The Gemara, the Talmud asks this question. The Gemara, the Talmud analyzes the difference of Achashverosh and Haman. They say like this in the Talmud Megillah 14a. Achashverosh and Haman are similar to two people. The parable. One guy was a farmer, had a mound of dirt in his field. The other was like a guy, a farmer, had a big ditch in his field, a huge crater, in his field. And it messed up their field because you want to plow, you have to go around this like little hill. You lose, and when you want to plow and sow, you have to go around this ditch. You're losing the space. It's inconvenient. So the owner of the ditch was musing to himself, I wish I could buy that, my farmer neighbor's big pile of dirt that's a mound, so I can fill this ditch and level out the ground. And the owner of the mound was, meanwhile, he was, talking to himself, I wish I could purchase the right to dump my dirt in that mound. Not long afterwards, the two met. And the owner of the ditch said, hey, I was thinking, sell me your mound of dirt. And they sell mound of dirt, take it for free. Okay, that's the end of the parable. So can anybody decipher the parable for me? Who's who? What is they compared to? How is this bringing out like the different anti-Semite personalities of Haman Achashverosh? Who's who, first of all? Let's start. Who's the owner of the mound? Achashverosh. It says in the thing. Who's the owner of the ditch? Haman. Okay. What's the mound in the parable? The Jews. Very good. The Jews. I got this extraneous thing I have to deal with. It's bumping out of the way. It's like annoying me to go around it. The Jews are extra people. They're different. I wish I could get rid of them. Haman is like the guy who has a ditch. What's the ditch? Oh, but not the Jew. He has a ditch is a lack of something, right? It's a lack. It's missing. He's missing the Jews. he needs the Jews in his life. Oh, so if you get in detail, I guess, into the specifics, it's like there's different types of problem. There's like annoying thing in your way problem. There's like a problem that you're messed up, So the way is like this, and this is really, if you look, this is the in text 5a, which compare to 5b, the Maharal of Prague, page 174, Rabbi Yehuda Lowy says, Achashverosh is the Jews are around because they're not harmful to the owner. They're just annoying and extraneous. A trench, a ditch is a void. Haman considered the Jews a pit. Their very presence create a lack and void in him. They cause this like emptiness in him, this like very uncomfortable feeling by their mere existence. So Achashverosh said there's a bothersome thing is in the way. Haman says they're creating this like this hunger and this uncomfortability and void inside.
We see it all.
Oh,
There's the Polish people, among others, or like we have these Jews, and they're just extraneous or whatever. And Hitler was there to say, "Well, I've got this pit,
right.
and
I have this hatred."
let's fill them up. Let's fill it up."
So the next reading, 5c, is a very relevant reading by Rabbi Menachem Zemba. Rabbi Menachem Zemba, just so you know, was a pre-World War II Polish rabbi and halachist, a Ger Chassid, huge Torah scholar, wrote a prolific writer, and active in communal life. He was unfortunately killed in the Holocaust. He was gunned down in the Warsaw Ghetto. His family was killed in Treblinka. His body was exhumed to Israel in 1958. And thousands of pages of his writings was burned in the Holocaust. But he's a huge scholar. He writes like this on this piece. The Midrash in Bereshit Rabbah states, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, it's a well-known law that Esav Esau hates Jacob. It's a law. It's like a law of physics. Esau hates Jacob. What does law have to do? What is a law? Like you say it's a law that like the Irish hate the British or whatever, like whatever, like it's a law. So it's not like this. There are those who think they will not discover the rationale and the cause of anti-Semitism, and they strive to. However, reality demonstrates there is not even one valid reason. The hatred defies logic and reason. Their hearts are simply turned to hating, is important, God's people. In one place, they hate Jews because they're capitalists. In another, they are socialists. Here, they hate them because they work harder, as you said, Gary, and are smarter than the average individual. There, they hate them because they're useless burden in society. They're a parasite. Here, they're too pious and zealous. There, they're too progressive and secular. That's what it always is. The reasons are always contradictory. Therefore, Rabbi Shimon in the Talmud said years ago in the Talmud, it's a well-known law that Esav hates Yaakov. It's a settled principle. It's not a reason. It's just an axiom of it's a law of physics that there are those in the world that will always, not every non-Jew, but there are going to be non-Jews at any given time that will hate the Jewish people, which is a very disturbing thing to many. It says like there's no reason. It's like people are possessed to hate Jews. And we wonder why. Why? Well, what if there's no reason? What if it's just saying like it's built into some people that way? I think it's a very unsettling thing to people to hear because you're saying like some people have a certain that evil in them. I don't want to take too much time for this because it's really a huge lesson in its own right. But Appendix A, if you turn to page 191, it does give a little bit of a reason. So it's irrational, no reason. But Rabbi Zemba alluded to this, and also this is quoting from the Talmud in Appendix A. Why is Har Sinai? Why is it called Mount Sinai? What's the etymology? Everything in the Torah is a lesson. The meaning of Sinai. You want to know why? Sinai comes to the word Sinah, hatred. And this mountain, their descent. Oh, I'm sorry. Chovev was the real name. Chorev. Why did it get this kind of like Jewish nickname to call it Sinai? Because the word Sinai is similar to the word Sinah, hatred. Calling it Sinai informs us that it's the mountain from which hatred of Jews came down to the nations of the world. Why? This is kind of to say a very short version, but the Jews are God's people in the sense we become the morale, the conscience of the world. We're the Jiminy Cricket of the world. And people, there's going to be pushback to that, right? The goody two shoes or the one who represents the word of God and a higher way of living and a humility that's needed, they're going to be hated. And we said even a Jew that wasn't such righteous, exhibitor of this type of morality, the Jews still represents it. Even if they chuck this off this type of mantle of this mandate upon us. That's kind of a little bit of a reason of where does the irrational hatred? It's essentially why do people hate God? Because there's a certain once you believe in God, now you are required to act in a certain way. There's certain restrictions. You can't do whatever you want, right? And we give many examples. Hitler talked about this publicly. The Jews are like the conscience, and that's why he hates them, and other things. In his opinion, there's this kind of racial, the strong, racial evolution. The strong dominate the weak, and the Jews and the communists created this idea that there's a morality. He said that the Jews through Christianity upended his theory of racial evolution. The Aryan, the strong should overcome the weak because it made you have to feel bad for the weakling, the underdog. Anyways, that's just a short dealing with this issue. But ultimately, people won't always attribute, I hate the Jews because I hate God. And it's this built-in thing into the human psyche, to some in the human psyche. Okay. So that's why Mishra says it's a well-known law that Esav hates Jacob. So we're going to go to text number 6. So just to summarize, there are different types of anti-Semites. There's Achashverosh Oh, I didn't get to the answer. I'm sorry. Achashverosh is a guy who hates the Jews because he thinks they're annoying. They're a strain on society. Right? They're in the way. Okay, he has misconceptions, or he never met a Jew. It's possible to reform such a person. But those that are at the level of they hate the Jew because it makes them feel existential void, whatever, as we said, the reason, partial reason with this, how can you reason? Can you reason with Hitler? As long as he keeps up his leaning into his ideology, there's no room to reason. It's like your mere existence makes me feel empty. I have to get rid of you.
But they are the descendants of Amalek.
Yeah, same thing. Amalek is considered the archetype, irrational hatred of Jews. Even though they knew they were going to fight the Jews and lose, they didn't care. You could say today with Hamas, right? They're going to start with Israel. They're going to fight back. Is it a logical calculation? I mean, they might have some logic at world sympathy and whatnot, but sometimes it becomes people can get to a depraved level where it becomes like the Jews' existence equals I just can't exist. So I'd rather lose everything and kill my civilians, have my civilians killed so I can hurt them a little bit or a lot. It's irrational. People want to give it a reason. They want to say, oh, it's because of the land and the worst thing when October 7th happens, like says, we have to, of course, decry October 7th, but you have to understand when you keep an open air prison, things are going to happen. Right? Like that was like, it's wrong, but when you keep people in open air prison, like this is kind of, it's going to happen eventually, this type of attack. That's not true. Open air prison doesn't justify what happened on it's not to be expected or justified, even a little bit. But people want to give a reason. Oh, it's because of this. Maybe it's because people reach a certain level or become so irrational, they'd rather die and lose ground just so they can attack the thing that makes their existence feel empty. Okay.
It happens during the whole Crusades and Spain and Holocaust, and it's always happened.
Yeah. All right, text number 6. I'm just going to paraphrase. So Fritz Haber was a Nobel Prize winning Jewish chemist. And he actually converted to Protestantism in order to save his career. Back at a certain point, I guess if you converted, I'm not sure which countries, but it was the ticket of admission into a certain level of university and whatnot. And as the head of an important scientific institute, he became an influential figure, especially after he succeeded in developing poison gas for the German army in World War I. As a racial Jew, Haber was forced into resigning his position in 1933. Nazism remade Haber into a Jew despite himself. To Albert Einstein, he wrote, "In my whole life, I've never been so Jewish as now." This is a very interesting idea that the suffering, the anti-Semitism has a certain effect. We know it's bad. We talked about the haters. What does it do to the Jew? As an example, the anti-Semitism brings out the Jewishness in a very shocking and you might think anti-Semitism, I even want to hide my Jewishness more because it's so what it's causing me. But the anti-Semitism, particularly of the 30s, was directed against you are a Jew and you are despicable and this, that. It actually brought out that he felt more Jewish. I don't think he meant it like I can't, like I don't, he actually feels it more.
Oh, they're Jewish.
Yeah. They barely, it was more nominally Jewish. So this is an interesting idea. Let's talk about Hank Greenberg, right? So Hank Greenberg suffered a lot of anti-Semitism. in his career. He was like the Jackie Robinson was for the blacks, he was for the Jews. And Hank Greenberg, just for the record, was not like, we talk about Sandy Koufax as being like the pinnacle of like Jewish pride. A guy who sat out the World Series to not play Yom Kippur. Right? And it was a big deal. It was a huge sense of pride for American Jewry. Hank Greenberg did play on Rosh Hashanah most times. He did play on Yom Kippur. I think one time he did because his parents begged him, but it was like, he wasn't this like, so you're not coming with a guy who's just like, proud Jew overall. He's Paul. And he was Jewish. He wasn't like against being Jewish, but he definitely wasn't like, he was trying to be a Jewish hero. So text number 7, Hank Greenberg had never wanted to be known as a Jewish baseball player. All he wanted to do was play baseball. It was his lot to play baseball in the most anti-Semitic period in American history. And times of anti-Semitism, Jews and anti-Semites alike garner attention. Whether he liked it or not, Greenberg was never going to be just a baseball player. I'm going to skip the rest. We saw the video. And he suffered tremendously. So what did that do to Hank Greenberg? So before we talk about what happened to him, let's talk about this concept of being crushed for illumination, that when we have this anti-Semitism that really affects us, that hurts us, that tries to tear us down, there's a term, it's in the Midrash, it says, it compares Israel to an olive tree. Jeremiah, we're like an olive tree. A nice symbol. What's the deeper meaning? Just as the olive, you might think, oh, because we're so peaceful. Just as the olive is allowed to ripen on the tree and then is brought down from the tree and beaten, and then is brought to the press and ground in the grinding mill, and then tied up with ropes, and stones are brought to crush it, and it yields its oil, so too is with Israel. The nations come and beat them from place to place, imprison them, bind them in chains, surround them with officers, and after this, Israel returns to God, and God answers him. It's a very interesting thing that it's almost like it's built in. I mean, we thought it's like, well, we have to deal with the fact there's evil people in the world. I don't think we're saying bring it on, I don't like sadomasochist, you know what I'm saying? But it's a sense of, but when it happens, we look at it from a philosophical level, it brings something very deep out from us. So, and you find this that when Jews are pressed for the Judaism, it has an effect, a counterintuitive effect, that actually they want to be Jewish more. When is the oppression? It's not so oppressed. It's like blasé. Okay, then the Jews might be somewhere into, some not, but the external pressure somehow says, "Oh, you're going to stop me." You say, "I can't be now. I want to be Jewish." And it's not just contrarianism. Let's talk about this is in general life, by the way. Challenges, they make us come in touch with ourselves. J.K. Rowling said, if I can say her name, but she said before she was canceled or not canceled or whatever. The point is, she said something years ago in a Harvard commencement speech when she was dirt poor, single mother, no money, rejected public, manuscript, and she said, there's one really good thing about failure and challenge. It strips away all the inessentials. It's interesting that, challenge, and some of that challenge brings out, either we fold or it brings out newer self-concepts that we didn't know we had. In general, challenge. So the Jewish challenge, with there's challenge against Judaism, it's going to bring new Jewish identity that we didn't know we had.
It also puts more emphasis on Jewish part.
Saying you thought you could be assimilated, we're saying no, you can't. Like you're saying, sorry, you don't get that option.
Emphasizing that part of the course.
But I'm saying, but the question, yeah,
It's a Jew.
no, but the question is the question is the reaction. Like if I say, like, you want your dream is to be a basketball player, and I say, you know what, I'm gonna make your life being a basketball, the route to being a successful basketball player 10 times harder because you're a Jew. So you might say, well, okay, maybe I'll stop, like, I'll lean less into my Judaism because it's hindering my love of career, my pursuit of career. What's funny is that it actually brings the opposite. Logically say, I want to be world-class Olympian. Being Jewish is making it difficult for me. Therefore, I will stop being Jewish, or at least want to stop being Jewish. But funny thing happens. People start attacking you because you're Jewish, despite that it's hard and it's a challenge, you now lean more into it. So it has the counter effect that one might think would happen, which is a pretty amazing phenomenon. So we're talking, we have to rename this class, The Wonderful Benefits of Anti-Semitism.
And that's really universal. Israeli wasn't.
Oh. So there are exceptions to the rule. It's a very good point.
I mean,
And
your country makes it illegal to be Jewish. That helps with
right.
shape your view.
So it's I'm trying to think if I don't have an answer, but there is one.
What you're saying certainly was the case probably in the last Spanish years.
Well, the opposite. I was in Spain, the exact opposite. Many Spanish Jews did not relinquish. I mean, when the 1492 decree happened, there was a choice: leave with all your property confiscated, convert into Catholicism, or die. So die was an option. So the other two options is convert or the ones leave. I don't think half left, a third left. Either a third or 2/3 didn't leave. Which you might say, wait a second, if it's so important, why don't they leave? Now you can say they stayed and they thought they could try to be Jewish secretly. At the same time, if this idea of like being Jewish is so important, then seemingly how could they why you want to stay for the money? I think that's part of the answer is that certain scenarios, in Spain or even today, it becomes like if I pretend that I'm not Jewish, so I'm denying that part of myself, but I'll secretly be. You think you can have your cake and eat it too. I think certain cultures make you think you can have your cake and eat it, which is a unique in history, didn't usually exist. There was never a have your cake and eat it. It was either be Jewish or not be Jewish. It wasn't like I can not be Jewish, but really be Jewish. And I think this kind of like today in America, right? People could be like, I'm totally living a not Jewish life, or let's say, I'm not even I'm anti-Israel, let's say someone says, but I'm still very Jewish. It's only like this type of unique experiment in history, which didn't exist that much, of like you can convince yourself that you have your Judaism despite like you're being really constrained in your Judaism. I think that might have happened with the Spanish Jews who stayed as well. Like they didn't think they were not being Jewish. They thought they were being Jewish secretly, but even though they're being very constrained. I don't know, that's a theory there. So it's interesting. Text number 9 says, Hank Greenberg, in his own words, by 1938, the 27-year-old Greenberg matured into a deeper understanding of world events and his place among them. He had begun to read more of the newspapers than the sports pages. He sounds like he was a jock. I don't know much about it. He understood the significance of what he was doing. Being Jewish did carry with it a special responsibility, Hank wrote. After I was representing a couple million Jews among 100 million Gentiles, and I was always in the spotlight. I was there every day, and if I had a bad day, everyone was calling me names that I had to make good. I just had to show them that a Jew could play ball. I came to feel that if I, as a Jew, hit a home run, I was hitting one against Hitler. So you see all the adversity and the anti-Semitism. It changed Hank Greenberg, who wasn't, we said, a very observant or even Jewish above all type of personality. It did make him feel that he has responsibility of representing the Jewish people. The story that I read about him, I might be getting the names pronunciation wrong, so you might have to correct me, Gary. So the Chicago White Sox manager, Jimmy Dykes, if I say that right. He won a game against the Tigers. He was the manager, big into bench jockeying. And someone, perhaps Dykes, said, you yellow Jewish bastard. Right? And okay. Later, well, Hank was he was a baseman, first baseman. So the White Sox batter Joe Cool. I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm pronouncing him Joe Cool. The manager told him, basically spike him, like go take a lead. So obviously going to throw the ball back to first base. They're going to come you're going to spike him, and he spiked him. So Hank punched him in the face, and the umpire got away in front and stopped again, and ejected Hank from the game. After that, he actually goes across the locker room into the White Sox locker room, and he says, "I want to know which one of you called me a yellow Jewish bastard." And many people told the story with pride. You know who got up and said that? Nobody. He didn't like tell the story, but like it got around. There was a lot of pride that he stood up for the Jewish people. So you're seeing Hank Greenberg, an unlikely type of hero, but he became a Jewish hero. Even though it wasn't this, Moses, but he was an unlikely hero because interesting that anti-Semitism could have an effect on you to say, I'm going to spite your anti-Semitism. I'm going to lean more into my Judaism and what I represent as I represent the Jewish people. Okay. So that is about anti-Semitism and the effect it has on people. Now, text 10 says, since 1945, and in many regions before that, explicit anti-Semitic literature was published and read only within the lunatic fringe of society. And its influence in recent times is minimal. This was written, this course, 10 years ago. Okay, 10 years. Past 10 years, a lot has happened with anti-Semitism. However, we could still say, interesting, he quotes Alan Dershowitz in text. Someone read text 11? Pam, want to read text 11?
Anti-Semitism cannot really form the basis for choosing to live Jewish. It could for the generation that lived right after the Holocaust and felt its effects directly, but the argument of the Holocaust tends to fall somewhat flat in the present age. The Holocaust argument for Jewish survival is very powerful, leading to the generation of Jews from Auschwitz and its immediate aftermath's actual memory. But its emotional impact is not nearly as great on the younger generation, for whom the Holocaust is yet another in the long chain of historical tragedies that have befallen Jews. The evil that the villains of history from Harlan to Hitler tried to inflict on the Jewish people in the past is not a particularly compelling explanation to the young as to why they should not be afforded the choice to live their lives as they choose, even if that means assimilation.
So Alan Dershowitz argues that anti-Semitism does not give a long-term basis to live Jewishly. So when there was anti-Semitism in the 20s and 30s, I don't know if that was the only reason, but it definitely helped Jewish country clubs and Jewish associations because you didn't really have an option, and you were also, it brought out kind of the Jewish pride, the Gaon Yaakov, as we call it. But anti-Semitism, so this course was in 2014. So until 2014, you could say anti-Semitism definitely has waned. Now the question is, has anti-Semitism waxed to kind of the levels of the 20s and 30s? So I don't think so. Right? Do you think, like, you know what I'm saying? Meaning, while anti-Semitism is more prevalent than it was 10 years ago, it's not acceptable in society. maybe there's more, maybe more fringes have more of a voice in mainstream society, but it's still not an acceptable concept in mainstream society. We'll get to Israel in a moment, the anti-Israel bias.
Not the Henry Ford level or
Right, right, exactly.
where the senators catch her giving the signs.
Exactly. That I think these things just it doesn't seem it's want to be commonplace. Someone who's very far, lunatic could, but like what's his name? The Breezies. What's the guy? The guy. The guy. The guy who said crazy anti-Semitic things with a sneaker company that was.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
Well, you're thinking about the basketball player Irving.
No.
But
The rapper, yeah, Kanye West. Kanye West. Yeah. Like, someone goes unfortunately crazy, they say ludicrous. And even then they don't get away with it. And this is a celebrity. So I'd say it has waned. Now it's very weird because now we're post October 7th, which is a unique type of anti-Semitism that exists. We'll talk about that soon. So and text number 12, and I don't want to I think we should read it. Text number 12. So he says, so while anti-Semitism has waned, right, even with today, it's not nearly as pervasive and acceptable as it was in the 20s and 30s, 40s, whatever. But it still exists, and it's morphed. It's different than it was in the 20s, 30s, but it's still very prevalent, but it's changed. And this is a very famous portion of this essay by Jonathan Sachs. Okay, the new anti-Semitism focuses not on Judaism as a religion nor on Jews as a race, right? In the medieval ages, they hate us because of our religion. In the Enlightenment, post-Enlightenment, they hate us because of our race. But now it's Jews as a nation. How did it penetrate the most sophisticated immune system ever constructed? I'm just going to say the United Nations, that now the United Nations is meant to stop hatred. It became a mechanism to further Jew hatred more than any other body. So what's the reason? The answer lies in the mode of self-justification. Most people, like how could the United Nations, which was made, he said, to human rights, right, now become such a biased hater of a people or facilitating that? So self-justification. Most people at most times feel residual guilt at hating the innocent. Therefore, anti-Semitism has always had to find legitimization in the most prestigious source of authority at any given time. What's the social currency of that time? That's the reason given for anti-Semitism. For example, in the first centuries, the Common Era, and again in the Middle Ages, what was the social currency? Religion. Okay, that is why Judeophobia took the form of religious doctrine. We hate the Jews because they killed our God, Lord, and so on. Okay. In the 19th century, religion lost its prestige. The supreme authority was now science. Now, what do we say? We hate the Jews because of racial anti-Semitism was really based on two pseudosciences. Social Darwinism, the idea that in society as a nature, strong survive by eliminating the weak, and the so-called scientific study of race. Okay. By the late 20th century, science had lost its prestige, having given us the power to destroy life on Earth. Like science didn't solve all the problems, create new ones. It solved some things, but it didn't make all the problems of mankind go away. By the late 20th century, science lost prestige. Today, the supreme source of legitimacy, or as they say, social currency, is human rights. That is why Jews or the Jewish state are now accused of the 5 primal sins against human rights: racism, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, attempted genocide, and crimes against humanity. So this is a very unique, and this is not, again, you might say, well, it's all anti-Semitism, it's just an excuse. Like, okay, it was bad when the excuse was religion, it's bad when the excuse was pseudo-racial science, It's bad when they claim we trample, we violate human rights. This happens to be worse than the other ones. Why do you think it's worse? Why do you think this is, meaning the anti-Semitism of, let's say, the racial, of the Nazis, or the anti-Semitism of the Crusaders? Horrible, right? We said there's one benefit, not the benefit, but it's a reality, I guess the benefit that comes out of anti-Semitism, that like the olive, it crushes and the essence leaks through. You crush the Jew, which we don't want the Jews to be crushed. But when it happens, whenever has happened, the inevitable result was a certain coming back to your Jewish essence, either individual or as a people, as a community, right? What's unique about the anti-Israel type of anti-Semitism, that a young Jew today could say, you know what? They're not coming saying that I hate you because you're Jewish, because you're bad religion, or you're bad you're worse, you're bad genetics, your racial Judaism. I don't hate Jews. I hate some Jews that are Zionists. Okay, so but I'm saying what you've done is it's very clever, because you said I like Jews. I love Jews. I'm very but I don't like this big Jewish project, right, called Israel. So the problem is now a person, a young Jew today, right? No one's attacking you. You could say, well, that's some, people, that's some Jews that have an idea about, having this place in the Middle East. But as an American Jew of diaspora, like they're not saying I'm bad. They're not saying like that. You can divide it. Like they're saying the Jews that do that Israel thing are bad, or they're the ones that are doing apartheid state. But as far as what I know Judaism myself, I'm not. They're not. No one's attacking me, and that's a very, very egregious type of anti-Semitism, because the truth is they don't just hate the Jew because of the Israel project. It's just, again, it's always a cover. It's another, it's a social currency, disguise of why these Jews are bad. But now you don't have to. It doesn't have the benefit, as we said, of anti-Semitism. What was the benefit of anti-Semitism? It brings out our Jewish essence. What if it's not directed at you? It's directed at some other Jewish entity. Or it's perceived as a different Jewish entity. What happens though? It's not directed, so you're not being crushed. You're not being affected. That now your Jewish adrenaline essence will come out. It's a very, very dangerous type of anti-Semitism, because it goes back to that. It's anti-Semitism with a lot of confusion. It doesn't like pin it on even the people. Just in like, I don't know. It's a very I think we get what I'm saying. So moving on to page 183. So what the end of all this is we want to talk about Jewish continuity. Is anti-Semitism is it an effective way to motivate Jewish continuity? So what would you say based on what we said? Is anti-Semitism a effective factor that will keep young Jews being Jewish?
Maybe as a result, but not as the main goal.
I'll take what I can get. Well, maybe.
Well, when things are good, then
Right.
we'll go, okay, everything's good, I can go back to.
So there's two. So what you're saying is that maybe it'll work short term. Maybe it cannot work long term. Once things go back to normal, good, American, non anti-Semitism is not allowed, is not acceptable, it will not motivate you to be Jewish. Only it's a crisis. If it only works in crisis moment, it doesn't work not in crisis moment. Number two, particular type of anti-Semitism today doesn't even create crisis. Doesn't necessarily, it sometimes does, but it doesn't necessarily create for every young Jew on campus a crisis moment. Oh, it's the other, it's the bad Jews.
Tie this to our last section. And that is, if you live in the shtetl, it's easier to be Jewish than when you're outside the shtetl.
So now we're outside the shtetl. We want to talk. So I started this class of we're outside the shtetl, 21st century. But we want Jewish continuity.
Now we're in that really pushed. It's easy to feel Jewish, like with the German chemist, Nobel Prize winner
Right.
chemist.
Right.
It's when your back's up against the wall.
So the shtetl is like, staying in the cocoon. Anti-Semitism is another kind of counterintuitive, but yet effective way of making you feel Jewish.
Create cocoons with Jewish country clubs, Jewish
Right.
law firms, and so.
But the motive, but you're forced to because of anti-Semitism, as you said, because you got but
Yeah, it doesn't always
right,
look what happened to Russia.
right.
The Tsar was prepared over and above. Look what happened to the Russian Jewry. They got
Right.
erased.
Well, they got erased in communism. It was after the Tsar. It was a different impression.
They crushed olives too much.
So it's very interesting. I think what was interesting. I know a little bit about Russian history just because it's like Chabad. Elementary school 101 is like Russian Jewish history. That's all we learn in history. But it's an interesting thing of history that the Jewish section, the Efsexia of the Jewish section of the Communist Party, was so efficient and so quick to eradicate 1,000 year of Jewish infrastructure in a couple of years. It was crazy what they did. It wasn't even meaning it's almost like how that happened. Only Jews could do that level of destruction to their fellow Jews, the religion.
It happened in other places where Jews were not the police force. In Spain or in other countries where a lot of Jews.
Right. So I think that was we said these are exceptions to the rules. We're saying like how does Spain make sense? So I think there's a concept there. In Spain, it's different. How that exception. I mean, here's my hypothesis. Anti-Semitism will cause at least short-term Jewish pride. Let's think about this. They're going to bring me counter arguments that look about the Jews in Russia, right? They had all this anti-Semitism, and they basically lost their Jewish knowledge in a matter of 70 years, right? Till the Troika. So I think the answer to that's an exception to the rule, and the reason that happened was because the Jewish life was so erased so quickly. It was 7 years of just residual ignorance. There was no one to teach. There wasn't infrastructure, even if you wanted to believe into your Judaism. That's how I think that might be an answer. Spain is a different reason. There was this kind of this having my cake and eating it too mentality, and unfortunately, as it was a constraining on Judaism, which eventually the Marranos, many of them assimilated into oblivion. But typically, Jews have a virulent reaction against anti-Semitism that causes an explosion of Jewish identity.
The analogy of the olives is not that each olive is on its own as a single, but it's as a group.
See, them
maybe as a group, as all the Jewish.
I never thought of that.
That could be more.
Meaning a few people together. Although you have individual Jews that it wasn't that they were killed together or they weren't oppressed together. It was like they literally were oppressed individually, singled out, and that alone was enough to make them have a Jewish renaissance in their identity. The stories of capos, the stories of heretics that, the Nazis, like Haber, for example. I mean, that's an example. Haber was a guy who cared less of his Judaism, and he was a chemist. The Nazis made him feel it. Okay, so we're at this point where anti-Semitism seemingly may have a short-term boost to Jewish continuity, but it cannot do it long-term, definitely not in times of calm. And particularly the type of anti-Semitism today is particularly sneaky, where it doesn't even have the effect on every Jewish kid, what it at least should have that crisis moment. So there's an article on page, I'm sorry, on page 183. I'm just going to basically a Jessica Groves, a writer and journalist. She says she read the Pew study in 2014 that as we get further from anti-Semitism, it's not surprising Jews are fewer Jews are religious because other people let us forget who we are. And I'm not devastated by the findings of the survey. It's predictable that a skeptical, educated population, 58% of Jews are college grads, compared with 49% of Americans, will be moving away from religion. But I have more mixed feelings than I thought I would. This is a agnostic, atheist, I don't know, I have mixed feelings that Judaism is waning. The notion that American Jews are eschewing religion so broadly makes me a little sad or worried for, again, Jewish continuity. Why does she care so much? Or guilty for being part of the problem, she said. But I can't. So it's funny. This is a very liberal, agnostic Jewish writer, and she's admitting she feels sad that Judaism is winning. Like, why? Like everything you stand for, your academia, like what do you care that so you're these archaic Jews, or archaic Jewish traditions are what makes her sad. Very interesting that she's admitting that. But she said, I can't see myself bringing my daughter to temple every Friday to honor a God I don't believe in. What's the solution? So what are solutions for? So what would you answer a atheist, educated, liberal, young Jewish person who, it's weird or it's funny that they care so much. Because if by all your self-identifying markers, you shouldn't care so much. Why do you care so much? That's just a very interesting phenomenon. But two, what would you say to her? So she has this phenomenon. We can't explain it. Well, we can explain it. We call it the Jewish soul, but she can't explain it. So what do you say to Jessica? What do you say? What she do? She doesn't want to go to temple. Like,
Why is that intellectual, but sort of sometimes it is in my experience. Sometimes it's more of like you don't have agnostic Jews that still go, right? It's more like a sense of community.
right. So you can answer her. You say, go for the community factor. Okay, that's it. That's a very good answer. So text 14, I just want to paraphrase because we're running out of time. A rabbi wrote, in response, says, many young Jews are rejecting, they're not rejecting Jewish identity, they're rejecting the American concept of synagogue is the crux as the central spoke of Jewish life. Meaning the whole concept that we came to America, and I don't know if I agree with what he's saying 100%, but we spoke earlier that, I don't know if we did speak, in the book, this guy, Jonathan Sarna, who's in that's the guy, the professor that's in the video every week. He wrote a book called American Judaism, American Jews, American Judaism, very interesting book, comprehensive, from the beginning of the 1600s till whatever, till today, about American Jews and kind of the trends. And the idea that we made the synagogue like the most important thing about Judaism, the temple, you have to belong to a temple. That's considered like a badge of honor. Like I belong to a temple. Oh, now I'm like an active Jew, right? It's like a staple requirement. Belong to a temple, you're an active Jew. That is a mistaken notion, he contends. In this book, American Judaism by Jonathan Sarna, he says the whole idea of that, we took it from Christianity. We looked at the way the Christians made the church, right? Church was the biggest building in town. It was the gathering place. It has a certain reason. For whatever reason, Christianity puts all its emphasis on the house of worship as the center of religious life. There's other parts of religious life. That's the center of it. And we've said, well, you know what? Whatever reason, I don't know why they did that, but the synagogue will be the center of Jewish life. So mix that with American melting pot. Now prosperity is you have American dream. You have the opportunity for prosperity. So I want prosperity, and we can now just say I can feel a committed Jew by belonging to a temple or a synagogue. That was a bad equation. What it did was, it's not true Judaism. That's not historically what the center of Jewish life was. Not the synagogue. It was an important institution, but it was not the center, the central spoke of one Judaism. It wasn't the main, the yardstick of your Jewish investment. And that, he says, that mistaken notion is what the young people are rejecting. They don't say, I don't want to be Jewish. They want to be Jewish. They don't want to be Jewish the way they were told. It means to be Jewish is belonging to an institution that they have to pay dues to. I'm saying the dues is the thing. We have to pivot away from that model. It's a relatively new model. It's only 150 years old. It's a failed experiment. And now we have to move back to real Judaism, what the real yardstick of Judaism is. And what is that? Text 15 is Jewish life. Your personal looking for Jewish meaning in your life, that is the yardstick of how much you're leaning into Judaism. Not how much you go to temple or synagogue. How much are you trying to incorporate Jewish thought, practice into your daily life? Those are code words for Torah and mitzvahs, but I mean Jewish thought, Jewish thinking, Jewish actions, Jewish practice. That was always Jewish life. Yes, we do need a synagogue so we can do it better, but it's not like going to the synagogue made you Jew. Like, first you were a committed Jew at home, and you were a committed Jew when you went to school as a kid, you learned in Cheder, and your whole life was Judaism. Then, you wanted to have a Jewish association where you got to do it. It's called synagogue. Matter of fact, text 15 was the famous halacha from the Chafetz Chaim, and there's only enough money in a community, small community, to build a mikvah or a synagogue. Or even purchasing a Torah scroll for a synagogue, mikvah goes above the synagogue. Why? Because mikvah, which is about helping a man and wife be able to live a Jewish life in this very sacred part of their life, so that takes precedent. So home-based Judaism, the idea of, that's just one example, but that's always was Judaism was not even, see, hear this. If you say Judaism is about being a synagogue, you're saying Judaism is essentially a religion. Religion is best done in a religious place, go to synagogue. But Judaism isn't a religion in the typical sense of the word. It's a way of life. It's a way of life. We said it's a family, right? It's a family type, it's a spiritual family model. And the Jewish people are a spiritual family, and Judaism is the way we practice our being a family. So that's the main thing, is to be a family by practicing how to be a family. Okay? The synagogue, yeah, it can help. It's a good example. It's like I pay money to a gym, but I don't exercise. They say in these books of Atomic Habits, or one of these books, like the way you talk about, you want to motivate yourself to do something new, a new habit. You don't say, I'm gonna jog 10 minutes a day. You have to sort of, it's interesting in these books. I think it's Atomic Habits. It's one of those books. The best is, I am a jogger. I'm a jogger. You want to start identifying as a jogger. I'm a jogger. I'm someone who jogs. I'm going to go jog and I'm going to get into it and become a jogger. I'm a jogger. And a jogger does at least 5 minutes of 5 minutes a daily of jogging. Understand? You first we have to say, I identify as a Jew in my life. And I do more of it by practicing Judaism in my life. And the synagogue helps it, but that is not the yardstick. The secret of Jewish survival, just to summarize text 16, is Rabbi Gershon Chano Chenach Lehner, who's the third Rebbe in the Ishbitzer Radzin Chassid dynasty. A brilliant Talmudic scholar, he wrote innovative commentaries. And he says, Jacob's portion is different from that of the nations. For the past 1,800 years, we've been exiled from our land, from one exile to the next, one disaster to the next. But this Torah is our possession and our inheritance. It is our praise and our splendor. It teaches us the path of life, how to, by walking in God's ways, we can valiantly overcome. Walk through fire, we are not burned. Through water, we are not swept away. The Torah has set us upright forever. You can read the rest yourself. I want to say there's more I just want, before we finish, I saw the, what's the definition of meaning in general? Finding meaning. How do you define it? What does that mean? Everybody's looking, finding meaning, right? So what does it mean to find meaning? When you find it, what does it look like? How do you found it? Lines with you. Okay, so it's like there's no definition. It's like love. It hits you like lightning, and can we define it? Can we help people have like some telltale signs?
There's in Supreme Court jurisprudence, they had a hard time defining pornography. Justice Stewart said, "I know what I see,"
Mhm.
and so it's kind of a similar thing here. It's
So you're saying there's no definition, it's just like it hits you like lightning or it doesn't. I want a little bit of a definition because I think
It's the action that the person knows what action has to be done. That's
knowing what the next step is.
the action that has to
Action.
Purpose.
Purpose. What's purpose? I mean, I guess we've answered it.
some of it is identification icons.
So I want to share you. I read it in the textbook. I found this very, very meaningful. Not to sound cheesy, pun not intended. Meaning is when you find something, a cause, a framework, something that helps you connect the dots of yourself. Understand? We are people, human being is a multifaceted creature. And when we find meaning, any meaning helps at least connect some parts of ourselves. As a simple example, let's say I find meaning joining the recycling club on Sunday morning. I go with like-minded civic-minded people, and we pick up trash and we recycle it. So why are they doing that? Camaraderie, they feel they're contributing to the earth, whatever the reason. It's connecting different parts of the human need for, belong to something special. This seems like it's doing benefit. It's connecting dots of that person's self and their needs. Well, Judaism is exactly that. It's the ultimate meaning. It's a way of life. It's to connect every aspect of your life, of your schedule, of your aspirations, of your intellect, your emotions. It's supposed to connect it all together. So in that sense, there's a beautiful definition of meaning. Said it helps you connect the dots of yourself.
That can be a double-edged sword because, as we said earlier today, your meaning is in human rights, and so it can be potentially
It's
potentially manipulatable error.
So I think the answer, the good point, I think the answer to that is that a person that can, let's say, I think my meaning is human rights, and then accuse Israel of it, is actually self-denying. They're disassociating from a certain reality of themselves. Because a unbiased person would not accuse Israel of human rights. They're the best of human rights comparatively to any, right? Meaning to say something like that, you could say it, but it doesn't mean it's true and that it really aligns with what is truth is in your heart as well. So you can ignore that truth that Israel is really the top of human rights, whatever whatever they're doing. You could choose to ignore. No, it's not true. They're the worst. They're the worst. But when you're doing that, you're lying to yourself, or meaning you're denying your, I say objectively, you are denying, we would say at least, this person is denying a part of someone could be a KKK member and say, "Hey, I find meaning in my KKK, wizards, and I'm doing a good thing. I'm, keeping okay." They're obviously to do that. You have to take a leap and deny a lot of real humanity that you have inside yourself to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think if you're truly honest, you're going to become a little more. There's somewhat. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I don't think you can go a slippery slope as someone who takes a cause, runs with it, but they're not honest. Yeah, if you're not honest, then you can use the meaning as a reason to go do what the heck you want and say you're saving the world.
Find meaning is like for the person to feel it's choice to do something, but it's not really a choice. To be Jewish and to live a Jewish life is because we have to.
Yeah, but
Like find a meaning and all this.
who says you have to? What? So who says you have to? We skip that.
You want to live a Jewish life, you have to do that. It's not because we're doing that because we're commanded to do it, not because we feel like we have to do it.
Well, many people say, "The heck with that! I'm not doing that." Like that's what you say. I don't want to do that.
That's
So what do we answer
they're
them?
looking for meaning. They're looking for their feelings to be good with what they're doing.
So we would answer to them, and we're going to have to. Is that they're denying a part of themselves? It's not about commandment. The word mitzvah also means connection. Every mitzvah is to connect yet another part of yourself with Hashem. All the mitzvahs, all of yourself with Hashem, and with your fellow Jew, and with purpose, and with the future. When you don't do a mitzvah, it's not, well, a very real aspect is that you're not connecting with a part of yourself. You are disassociating with a part of yourself by not doing that mitzvah.
But our hearts is the prefix of actually
Yeah.
the purpose of this whole world is to be closer to Hashem. How you do
Okay.
that? By doing the mitzvah.
Right. Okay.
It's not
So-
about, it's not about feelings or meaning or
So if someone says, "Why are we Jewish?" Because that's what Hashem said.
that's the bottom line.
But why did Hashem say?
The purpose of us is to try to be close.
Why did Hashem want us to be close to Him?
Well, it's all sorry. Hashem is good. He wants to.
So Chassidus goes a step beyond Mesilat Yesharim. It says Hashem, and there's a big. I'm not so familiar with Hashem. I do know that it says Hashem chose to want to have a relationship with us. So you take away the point. He didn't need to have a relationship because He's all powerful. But Hashem chose to create this world so He can have a relationship with humanity who chooses Him back. So, in other words, when we do a mitzvah, it's connecting us. It's not we're just doing it because Hashem said so, because He wants to do what. This is the purpose. Doing your purpose is a very gratifying thing, and it's true. It's not like just like, well, you want to feel good. What do you mean? Hashem says do the mitzvah so we can. So my desire, nachas ruach shamarti v'nasr tzayni. Do my will, and I'll feel that I'm getting something from this relationship. That's it. That's what could be greater than a puny creature fulfilling a cosmic purpose, right? Like, isn't that the greatest and a cosmic purpose that is about connecting the puny creature to the cosmic infinite creator?
That's to make us feel good. And it's a point, but it's not the main point.
I think it is the main point. This is where Chassidut is going to have a big argument. I know there is, I don't know the details, but I know this is a big discussion. Is the point Hashem teva tov lehitiv? Hashem's desires to do good. And in other words, He doesn't need any of this. He wants doing good because that's just what He does. Chassidut would say that Hashem chose to want to have a relationship. How do you work with that theologically? He say you need something, it's a problem. Chassidut says that Hashem ultimately chose to want a relationship. So we do it. What could be greater than giving Him that relationship by being a successful giver, reflector to Hashem. So, in bottom line is that anti-Semitism in of itself will not be the one to keep Jewish continuity. It at best works short term. Particularly today, it doesn't even work well short term. It's very confused, the type of anti-Semitism today. And so today we're in a reality in history unique where we have to choose Hashem because it's who we are. It's digging into ourselves. It's digging deep into ourselves. It's not like, well, I'm doing this because I want to have another JC for another 50 years. No, I'm doing this because this is my purpose. This is my essence. How do you train children and youth to have that attitude? Because that's the only game plan we have for Jewish continuity. How are you going to do that? So give me some ideas. I don't know. You have 10 seconds.
Well, the Catholic Church said, give me a child until
Oh,
you're 6 years old.
right.
So I'm not saying, I'm not judging here, I'm saying one clear,
Sorry.
one clear way is if I say, I'm going to give my child, particularly when they're young, everything I possibly can, every tool, every idea, every notion, every level of thinking I can to have them be Jewish. Again, I'm not making judgment here to say that's good, that's bad, or whatever. To me, it's good, but I'm going to create commitment, and you can create commitment.
You create self-discover. I'm going to create that's commitment. It's not like I'm going to force them with a whip till they're 6. They're going to do it. I'm gonna bombard them with Yiddish and bagels, till they're 6, and they're going to want to keep doing it. I'm going to share, but it could hurt because it's ultimately meaningless. And when you get mature and you look for something more deeper in life to connect to, bagels and Jewish folk songs.
You're the one who said, how about I see? Come on.
So touche. I would answer though, tefillin, if you look at it as just the equivalent of like a ritual of bagel, but it's just a ritual version of bagel. Tefillin is really a much more than just an action. It is an action. It's a mitzvah, so it has that bonus that bagels don't have it. But even besides that, tefillin is really a affirmation. It's an affirmation. Eating a bagel is a cultural preference. It's not an affirmation.
Bagel never came up here. You can teach people about Judaism and it's something with a little more depth than eat a bagel and you'll be Jewish.
So what is that? So tell me what is that depth?
Well,
let's fine.
How about like teaching Jewish history, how going to Jewish events, doing things like religion.
Knowledge, culture.
Yes.
So I would say you're right, but experience has shown even Orthodoxy is one of the most successful cultural builders probably known to man, Orthodox Jewry. Not every Orthodox person is like, yes, I am this theologian, doing my life in this very particular Jewish way. It's a culture. Yeah, they might be like they want to do it for, like, I hope I'm doing it for the right reason, but ultimately the motivator might feel the culture. The reality is that first of all, Torah mitzvahs, if it's true, Lenny, if it's true, right? If it's true, it has a certain coming home effect to the Jew. If it's true, if God gave it and it's your purpose, and it's like, then it has a certain relevance where luxury items, peripheral items won't have, or even cultural items won't have. That's what's one. But even more so, Torah mitzvahs ultimately is selling you a worldview. It's helping you refine yourself to have this kind of Jewish worldview. Tefillin is not just a ritual. Tefillin is also an affirmation. Tefillin is, besides this, putting aside the spiritual roots, I think
when I see Rishi sitting with your children going over
Jewish
substance, and it's getting that Jewish substance across early. You said, what's one?
But I'm saying,
I think that is a definite way.
But not all Jewish. I'm saying not any. You can't just say, like, if I would teach them any type of Jewish substance, even if it's not particularly deep, it's not particularly self-propelling to the next deep discovery, right? It won't necessarily have that staying power. I think we have to teach Judaism. First, we have to do Judaism. You're right. That's the number one thing from a young age. But always in the backdrop, we ask ourselves that, is it dot connecting? Is this helping give them is this helping my child connect the dots? I think this is to me, is a very powerful metaphor, personally. I think it explains why you teach a kid. It's not like just indoctrinate them till they're 6. You're giving them really tools to discover life for the rest of their life. It's not like in yeshiva, I got everything I need to know. I think all I got was the tools that when I go on my journey of life, I can now use these tools for self-discovery. You know what I'm saying? It's a slight, we want to give really good tools and tools that can be built upon later. But in summary, yes, early education is a very important one because that is a tool. Any early education is a tool. I would say doing mitzvahs is a way of life, adding to more of it in your life, not in your rhythm of life. What's a mitzvah you can add into your rhythm of life? Not just what could I do Jewish more. It's more like how can I add a mitzvah that's gonna. If you think about the 10 mitzvahs that the Rebbe promoted, the campaigns, tefillin, Shabbos candles, mikvah, a house full of Jewish books, mezuzah, tzedakah, more of 6, we have 4 more to go. Havat Yisrael, I said mikvah already. Mashiach, 8 or 7 or 8.
But isn't this semantical? Because this is all indoctrination.
I think it's not because indoctrination tells you not to think. This is tools to help you actually be more questioning and dot connecting. I'd say indoctrination turns your brain off. This actually gives your brain license to question and probe and connect. And it's not just semantical. I think it's
You're twisting the words because indoctrination comes from doctrine. And you're teaching, you're helping to teach the doctrine. I don't think we disagree.
okay.
I'm just saying it's semantical because you said what is a way you can, drive Judaism in, and if you are teaching children to connect the dots early on,
100%.
then you're
100%.
trying to get a lot more than trying to say, well, now you're an adult, but let's
100%. You know what I do on my Sundays? I'm not arguing with you. So I'm saying, but I want to point out, first of all, it's never too late to adopt more of this because the goal is about Judaism should be a way that connects every part of your brain and your heart and your actions and your community and your purpose all together. That's what's the way? That is the system we call Torah. Torah mitzvahs isn't just rituals. It's a system for life. And the more you can plug into that system, it says mitzvah gura mitzvah. You're going to want to do one mitzvah after the next. Not because, oh, I like this so much, I'm going to buy the sequel. It's a matter of like, if it's part of a system, any part of the system will draw you to the next part of the system. So yes, earlier the better for children. But even if we have lapses in our education or lapses of our observance, we can always plug into that system because ultimately Judaism is a way of life. Particularly, one more thing to finish up is that we went way over time. Is that Judaism done at a free volition? Nobody told you. You have no prompts from the anti-Semite or from the shtetl, right? Whether it's the shtetl smothering you with Judaism or it's the anti-Semitism, making you defiantly Jewish. You're doing nothing. You can do whatever you want in America. You can do whatever you want. And yet you still choose it. This is an opportunity of basically God saying, I want you to choose with no prompts. And when you do that, that's the real choice. Not in the shtetl, not with the anti-Semites. When you do with nothing can stop you, and yet you're seeing, why I'm choosing God and Judaism? Because that's how I find meaning in life. That's how I find connection in life. What could be more pure than that? So we're going to sum up the points of tonight's class.
Key points. Lesson 5. 1. Anti-Semitism is no longer a bar to assimilation in most Western countries. 2. Anti-Semitism is not a rational doctrine. The reasons that are given for hating Jews morph continuously. Therefore, it cannot be defeated by rational argument. 3. Anti-Semitism continues to exist, but because it is no longer deemed acceptable in the West to hate Jews as individuals, it has now taken the form of irrational hatred of Israel. 4. The path to Jewish identity in the free world must meet the test of meaning. To foster Jews' identification as Jews, Jewish identity must be personally and powerfully meaningful. 5. A membership model to Judaism asks too much of synagogues. Significant life-embracing Jewish experiences at home and in daily life are the key to Jewish continuity. 6. The Jewish survival strategy for thousands of years, gaining Jewish knowledge through Torah study and joyful observance of mitzvot, is effective in creating a meaningful Jewish life.
Thank you for joining us for the series. Hope you enjoyed as much as I did. May we all be committed to connect more dots of our life in the world's life. And of course, by the way, this is really another lesson which we're not going to get to, but when we do this for ourselves, this heals the world because everybody's looking for connection. Everybody's looking for, unifying oneness and purpose in all facets of their existence. So we can do it as Jews. This is what it means to be aligned to the nations. If we can be aligned to the nations, then, and by doing it for ourselves, then you know how much we're going to benefit the non-Jewish world by this. So add mitzvahs, connect more dots, save the world.